Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And first, I want to say that the Board of Trustees is meeting virtually tonight under exceptions to the Open Meetings Act on the basis of Governor Pritzker's executive orders concerning the COVID emergency and my determination as village president that it is not practical or prudent to meet in person at this time. Accordingly, this meeting is being conducted virtually with board members participating through the Zoom platform. A village official is present at Village Hall during this meeting as required by the Open Meetings Act. Public comment may be emailed to the village at the web address shown on the agenda. And there will be no use of the chat function because it is not captured on the audio for a recording of the meeting. So with that, I will ask the clerk for the call to order, please, for the roll call, please.
Trustee Haber. Trustee Holland. Oh,
Here.
Trustee Jamerson.
Here.
Trustee Clayton.
Here.
Trustee Dickin. Here. Trustee Eastman.
Here.
President Ford.
Here,
We have a quorum.
thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes of the May 3rd meeting. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Or any questions or comments? Anyone wishing to make additions or deletions? Okay, hearing none and seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Dickin. Aye. Trustee Eastman.
Aye.
Trustee Haber.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Minutes are approved. Next item is the approval of bills. May I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
Second. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, having heard that, is there any discussion? Are there any questions or comments? Trustee Jamerson?
I have two questions. First of all, item number 464, which is OK Electric. I'm guessing that's for the work that they did at the reservoir. But I don't know that because I can't tell, but I'm guessing that's what that is. Does anybody, is that right, Carissa?
Yes.
Okay, and then just below that, number 978, Sunrun Installation Services. Says application fee, or,
I know this.
okay,
It's for a resident at 1835 Stranger. He started a project and unfortunately he passed away. So we refunded part of the money he put up because we certainly weren't going to do a final inspection because the project never even was started. So we were being kind.
well, and I'm fine with that, but the permit and everything was taken out by Sunrun, not by the resident?
Correct. Sunrun was doing the work. They were going to put in solar panels.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other, Trustee Dickin?
Yes, I had a question regarding the final item 410 for training expense with the Village of Buffalo Grove. And then I also had a question regarding item 936, which was tagged as Crime Lab Services for $8,161.
Okay,
Do you have it in front of you? Here's the Crime Lab Services.
okay, well, I know what they are.
Oh, yeah, I'm
The
sorry.
Crime Lab Services are 2 annual fees that we pay to belong to the Northeast Multi-Regional Crime Lab. And that's where we send forensic evidence, fingerprints, that sort of thing. That's something we pay once a year. It's budgeted for. I think there were 2 payments to Buffalo Grove for training. One of them was for, we go through their fire department for one of my officers who does our CPR training. He gets, he has to go in there, I think, every couple of years to renew his certification. And then there was another payment to Buffalo Grove, which I think was only a couple $100. And that one was, we used their range and the deal is that we pay for one range cleaning a year and we can use their range.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm noting to the trustees that we are looking at putting central management services on an automatic payment schedule. And that is our payment to our healthcare for health insurance for our police force and I believe staff at Village Hall. So that payment is consistent and it happens every month. And we're looking at that because it would be a more efficient way of not only handling that, but it would ensure that it would be paid timely every time. We are also looking at putting the union dues on an automatic payment schedule, because again, those don't change and those go with the payroll every month. So we're looking at those two things. The other things we are looking at are using automatic transfers, or rather ACH transfers instead of checks for some other payments. One of those would be the United States Post Office. Are there any comments from the trustees on the direction we'd like to go on those? Trustee Jamerson?
Well, in general, I'm not a fan of automatic payments, regardless of whether they are consistent every month or not. I think we're paying an outside accounting firm a lot of money. And if they can't make timely payments on these things, especially when they're consistent and they know they're coming, I have a real problem with that. ACH is the way payments are starting to go throughout everybody.
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily against that. You just have to be super careful about how they go out. We have a two, we use them all the time at our company, but we have a two authorization process where two different people with two different fobs have to put in their 6-digit number that changes every, I don't know,
20 minutes?
30 seconds before the ACH will go through. And I think that if you make sure there's some kind of protection like that in place, I'm not against the ACHs, but I don't understand why, when we're paying bills twice a month, we can't pay the power bill on time. We can't pay all the rest of these on time. We shouldn't be getting hit with charges, especially since, like I said, we have an outside accounting firm that we're paying a lot of money to. It's just my opinion.
Yeah, just on that point, we've moved a lot of those, the utility bills, the electric bills and so forth onto that. So we don't have any more late payments fees. We have a great number of Commonwealth Edison fees bills that come in because of the sewer connections and so forth, the electric stuff there. So we've got a ton of those, and putting them on an automatic payment plan eliminated confusion, and it made sure that everything got paid on time, because the bills look very similar. And they're only identified by address. So this being a question of going with the payroll, I mean, literally, it happens, every month. And it's not just,
You don't need to defend what, you already said that. So
Okay.
you asked for my comment. I gave you my comment.
okay, fine. Is there anyone else who has an opinion on that? Trustee
Not-
Deacon?
Not specifically on that, but, for things that are reoccurring every year, for example, such as that crime lab services, is there a way to tag them so that we know that it's a reoccurring annual type of an expense versus just a completely new item? I mean, you knew this, but me kind of being the new kid on the block, this was, a new item.
Well, we do it through budget for an annual fee, if it's a membership fee.
No, is there
I
a way
think-
to just tag it on the expense report so that it's noted as an annual reoccurring expense?
Yeah, we can have our
Oh, Nicole.
accounts payable. Sorry, I'm here too. Yeah, we can add that in the description and just say, annual dues or annual fee.
I'll note,
That's all I'm asking.
yeah, I'll note when I approve the bill that it's annual, and that way David in accounts payable will know to tag it after Nicole gives them instructions. So
Again, we're working through and tightening up our processes, so we don't have to spend so much time on this, and we can spend time doing other things that start to pile up. So again, hearing no other further discussion unless I'm missing someone. Roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton,
Aye.
trustee Dickon,
Aye.
trustee Eastman,
Aye.
trustee Haber,
Aye.
trustee Hollander,
Aye.
trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, Treasurer and Finance Committee report. I believe trustee Clayton, you have some materials for us, please.
Yeah, I sent them out. I apologize. Sent them out after the packet had gone out. I'm a little behind schedule, but so it was in a separate email. Basically, the message for April is that we operated slightly above break even at a profit of a net income of about $17,000 compared to budget of about $10,000 in terms of net income. So we basically operated on budget. That still leaves us behind for the full year. And I believe that part of the issue with that in the budget is the calendarization of the police revenue, which in the budget. So we'll have to go back and take a look at that. But it's basically a steady state. Things are as they have been for the last several months.
Are there any questions? Did I cut you? I didn't cut you off, did I? Okay. Are there any questions for trustee Clayton? Trustee Hollander, please. You're muted.
Yeah, on the accompanied comments with the report, Mike, there was a statement that our total cash is at 13 million plus. Is that cash?
That includes investments.
Okay. So it isn't cash, it's
It's cash and investments.
cash investments. All right.
Are there any other questions? Okay, moving on to the next item, Director of Community Services report.
Hello. I got a late memo from Kirsten. Her and Todd will finish up the inspections of the people who sent in that they had their trees removed by Thursday or Friday, and then they will put together a list for GHA to send out the second notices. So they get those out next week. And so Kirsten said she was kind of pleased at how the numbers were working out, and better than we've probably ever done before. So that's about all I got for now. That's it.
Sounds pretty good. Any questions for the director? Okay, moving on to the next item, consultants reports, attorneys report, please.
I was thinking it might be appropriate to just advise the board about some of the real estate discussions that we've been having. There seem to be a few of them going on, and if you think that's okay, Mayor, I just was thinking maybe so no one is surprised. First of all, I assume most of you heard the news that Baxter is putting its campus on the market. It was announced. I actually got a courtesy call from an attorney representing Baxter, just as a courtesy, wanting the village to know that this was going to be announced publicly before there was a press release. The reasons that they gave were essentially that far fewer people are coming to work in an office like that. They don't have the same needs for that office that they used to have. It's a lot of real estate, and it's hard to find another user that would use it just as Baxter's used it. So essentially, it's I think it's at least 100 acres that is basically probably going to be, you know, thought about, analyzed, and marketed eventually. While this was going on, we were also contacted by agents for Wolters Kluwer, and they are thinking, they've made no decision, but they're thinking the same thing, that their building is not being utilized for approximately the same reasons. And they are also exploring other avenues, what they might want to do. And, what they would like to consult with the village closely, allow us an opportunity to have some input on what they think might happen with the site. We've also had some meetings with agents of the owner of the 37-acre parcel, landfill parcel. And they're recalibrating after the industrial development fell through. And they're sort of suggesting that perhaps a significant component of multifamily, along with some amount of commercial, not clear on the allocation of that, but a fairly intense use of some kind of residential development is probably what the market is next pointing at if you get past logistics. Then we don't have any update on Lexington unless Carissa has one. I think they're still working through some issues. So the mayor and I were talking about this, and it seems important that we think about the impact, especially of the properties that might be developed in the village, what the cumulative impact of that development would look like, what the balance would be between new residential units and the fiscal base of the village. These are all discussions that we've been having, a bit piecemeal, because it's been coming to us piecemeal and it's still very preliminary. But I thought maybe at this point, just say that these things are percolating, and it's going to require some community thought and dialogue and engagement about what how we should plan for all this for the best outcome for the village.
Trustee Jamerson.
May I just ask a quick question? You said
Absolutely.
Baxter. Did you mean Baxter?
Yes.
Yes.
And where, but they're not in the village.
No, but
Oh.
Okay.
obviously.
I just wanted to make sure I was on the same page.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I think that's, we will be getting ideas thrown at us, proposals, and we've talked about various ways of working with, Trustee Hollander, we've been talking to him, at some point we may have to think about how we look at these decisions, how the board wants to look at these decisions in a sort of holistic sense, rather than, just as they come at us. And that's maybe something for the Plan Commission as well. I'm just mentioning all this because it's not just, perhaps it's not just one isolated development, and the scale of the developments would potentially be, significant. And so if anyone has, ideas or thoughts at this time, but we'll come back to you. I just wanted to let you know sort of preliminarily, we've started to have these discussions.
Thank you for bringing that up, because it has been coming bit by bit by bit and quite quickly in the last week or two, as announcements happen. Trustee Haber.
You know how many acres the Walter Clower site is?
It's
30.
it was originally about almost 50, 48 or something. And one of the agents who met with us said that they had concluded there were 35 buildable acres. Because we know that the north part of it is a lot of woodlands and wetlands.
Is there any reason to approach them about a donation to the village?
That's a great idea. Now's the time. I presume that they would want to have some more assurance about the potential rezoning of the property as part of that conversation.
I think we should probably think about that.
Donation of the camp, of their building and their land to the camp, to the village. Is that what you're saying?
Some portion of it.
The northern portion that's
The
next to
northern portion.
Chianti and full of valuable wetlands and woods and stuff.
Yeah.
I suppose one thing to, usually when you ask someone who has land to be developed like that, the question they have is, will I be given the same allowances when I develop as if I had, as if I had 48 acres, even though I'd given you 10 acres. In other words, will you apply the FAR as if we still had 48 acres? Will you? That's a typical type of discussion.
Yeah, I just think, I don't know that we need to think that through right now, but I just think we should have it on our radar that that's potentially something we'd want to discuss with them.
Sure. This was a very first initial type conversation, and there is no expectation that Walters Kluwer would be doing anything within the year, let's say. Baxter, on the other hand, it's really hard to know. And it does, even though not in the village, it would have an impact on our borders. Surrounding, any other comments for council at this point?
Regarding Federal Life,
Yeah,
that property in Lexington, do we know if they have a definitive agreement yet, or is that still being negotiated?
We were told they had a purchase contract with Federal Life, that they were under contract, and I've been told that by an officer at Federal Life. I haven't seen the contract, but we were told that. And that they were using extensions as they went through their due diligence.
Okay, thanks.
anyone else? Well, we'll keep you informed. As I say, I don't think there's anything immediate on the horizon. The engineers report.
First, I'd like to say it was nice to see everyone at Saturday. It's nice to physically see some people that aren't on a screen. It was very nice, and thank you again for your dedication of the trade to Pat. That means a lot to GHA. So with that, I believe a couple operation things. I know one of the past board meetings, it was brought up about the restoration at Port One and Hoffman. That's now been completed. So hopefully that gets grown in and now it won't be so much of an eyesore. Obviously, we're continuing with the meters. We have a handful left. So we're hoping that through some coordination, we can kind of get that wrapped up with the summer coming up here. We're finalizing the hydrant flushing with the fire department, making sure we can get that protocol set forward. And then we're wrapping up the low pressure system for the sanitary. Engineering side, finishing up the Thornton's review, so that should be sent back to them shortly. They've already sent back in for their Lake County DOT review. And then other than that, Mayor, you're going to discuss the bid openings on your portion, right? So I think that's all I have for tonight for everyone.
Any questions for our engineer? Okay, moving ahead. We heard from the ecologist last time. Plan Commission report, Chairman Brightcove.
We are not meeting in this month, so I have nothing new to report.
Chairman Gratitor, do you have anything for the ZBA?
I have absolutely nothing to report. We have not met.
Again, pluses and minuses. Okay, are there any questions for either of our chairpersons? Okay, moving on to the police report, Chief.
The police activity is in your packet. A few things. On May 6th, we began conducting tobacco and alcohol sale compliance checks. First, we went to the Riverwoods Mobile to do a tobacco compliance check with our 20-year-old agent. And unfortunately, the cashier sold cigarettes to our agent, and he was cited. And I've since talked to the owner, who is going to take steps to make sure that doesn't happen again. We conducted alcohol compliance check at Koji barbecue restaurant. Unfortunately, the waiter there sold alcohol to our 20-year-old agent and was also cited. He was cited for illegal sale of alcohol to a minor, and that matter has been referred. He's been cited by us for branch court, but the matter is also been referred to the Riverwoods Liquor Commission, which as Mayor Ford is the commissioner. Also, as far as internet, we updated our internet package for the village, both the police station and the village hall. And I'm mentioning this because not only are we getting gig speed, and this is for less money than what we were paying, but in the package that we're getting, it comes with something called Comcast Business Security Edge, which I'm told seamlessly works in the background to help block threats such as malware, ransomware, phishing, and botnet attacks across all of our devices. Plus, that helps to prevent guests and employees from accessing compromised websites and infected links while on the network. Additionally, I had some discussion with Trustee Jamerson and Trustee Hollander. We were discussing parking on certain private streets in Riverwoods, where many of these streets are about 1 lane wide, or they're definitely less than 2 lanes. And you know, there's been some issues that we talked about where there were vehicles, including landscape trucks and trailers, that park on the side of the road, and the vehicles can't pull all the way off the road because of trees, ditches, and other obstructions. It causes a couple issues. One is a safety issue with vehicles trying to get by these vehicles, which are blocking the road or partially blocking the road. And it can be hard for a car to get by, and sometimes impossible for emergency vehicle, not so much the police cars, but for a fire truck arranging to get through, or an ambulance. Additionally, we talked about damage that's being done on the side of the roads and the shoulders, and that could shorten the life of pavement. So I was asked about if we did come up with some ordinance or some parking restrictions, how would the enforcement work? And if the board does choose to move forward, one thing is we can only do this where we have an agreement, contract with the road association. If we don't have a contract, the only thing that we can enforce on public property is DUI and reckless driving and leaving the scene of a property damage or of a private property accident. We can't enforce anything else in the Illinois Vehicle Code. So first of all, the association would have to have a contract with the village. And then I think it would be up to, and Bruce may want to weigh in on this, but I think it would be up to the different associations if they wanted to post signs, and we would have to post signs. We can't just have an ordinance saying that cars can't park on certain streets that are less than X amount of feet wide. I think that the associations could post their own signs, and they'd have to be meet certain guidelines that Carissa could give them advice on, as far as the guidelines of how big the signs have to be and the colors, that sort of thing. And maybe also suggest some suggestions about how far they have to be. But I think as a rule of thumb, basically, if the association chose to do that, they'd have to post signs where somebody would have to pass one of those signs saying that there's no parking on these streets when they're pulling into the neighborhood. I don't know if Bruce has anything to add on that as far as how we would allow associations to do that.
The only thing I have to add is that I don't know if the manual on uniform traffic control devices has a suggested spacing for signs, but when the chief asked me whether just placing a sign at the entrance, it says no parking on the street, but does that mean the street, like when you cross from Orange Brace all the way over to Juneberry now, does it also apply to Juneberry? I mean, I think if you look at most no parking restrictions, you'll see signs, no parking from here to the curb. You'll see another sign from here to here. It's pretty well marked. So I'm not confident that you could put simply one sign at, say, Orange Brace and Port Wine, and another sign at Deerfield and Thorn Meadow, and that would be the end of it. I think you probably would have to post the signs more consistently and possibly on both sides of the street, at least it's some spacing. I don't have the answer for what that would be. But I think you would need to think of it as normal types of parking restrictions, and they'd have to be appropriately posted.
Trustee Jamerson, did you have something for, excuse me, Chief, sorry.
Well, I have a question for Bruce
Sure.
Hubbard, because the village has a no parking ban village-wide from, I don't know, was it 2 to 6 a.m., Bruce?
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and I can tell you that maybe Thorngate has signs every so often, but most of the other public streets in town do not. And so, if that's the case, then we need to buy a whole bunch of signs, because there's none along Portwine. Not that you could park there even if you wanted to, but
Yeah.
Our concern is, and I'll tell you, here's my concern. Most of the roads in our Vernon Woods area are, if they're 15 feet wide, that's giving them something. And there are a lot of new people that have moved in, and as much as we tell them that they should have landscapers pull into the driveways, they don't. And the landscape trucks block half of the road. And there is not enough room for an ambulance or a fire truck in most cases to get by. The pavement issue is a pavement issue, and that's not the village's concern. But if somebody had an issue on Orange Brace, and the landscape truck who parks there for about 4 hours on a given time, at least the one I know of, and I've seen many of them in other places, the fire department would either have to wait for that guy to move that truck with the trailer, or they would have to try and figure out how they could turn around, which would be almost impossible for the fire truck. The ambulance could probably do it, but the fire truck would not be able to turn around. And they would have to go all the way around Portwine to Deerfield to Juneberry to Orange Brace. And considering that we don't have fire hydrants over there, by the time that fire truck figured out how to turn around and get over there, the house would be, in a pile of ashes. So it's more of a public safety thing than anything else. And regardless of the signage, we're enforcing it in other places in the village right now, and there's no signs. I don't know, maybe Trustee Haber can tell me, are there any signs on your street that say no parking?
Yeah, there are. There's the one that says no parking between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. or something like that.
But are they all the way down the street, or are they
No. There's like
just
one
at the entrance?
At the entrance, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying every 50 feet, but I'm just saying it, it's certainly the key. You want people to have enough notice so that they don't argue that they didn't think it applied where they were.
Is there a way to maybe, I don't want to use the word cite, but notify the homeowner and like shift the penalty or whatever to the homeowner and say, hey, those are your folks, make them park inside
I don't know. I mean, you'd have to ask the police and the attorney, but I don't think that would be legal. Because the homeowner didn't park the truck there, so.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think I would like to, I brought this up to the mayor a while back, and I mentioned it to Henry since he's the roads trustee. It would, as Bruce said, it would only involve, private roads where the association has allowed the village or the police department to enforce regulations. And I'm proposing that it be set to, if the road is less than 18 feet, 20 feet, whatever, that would allow two-way traffic, at least with a fire truck to get by. So that's.
Would this be something that, Chief Dano, would this be something that we could bring to administrative court? No parking violation?
Yeah.
So,
right now,
I'm looking.
Yeah.
Right now, we're not bringing parking tickets to court because we changed some houses, but we can, it's our admin court, we could take whatever we want to it, and other than moving violations.
I'm asking because, you know, a consideration, I'm not aware of
Yeah, we can do it.
a lot of violations between 2 AM and 6 AM. I think it just hasn't been common, and maybe we've been fortunate that no one's challenged it because they parked where we didn't have a sign.
We typically write warnings for those anyway, just because, as Rick said, it's not clearly posted everywhere. And
Okay.
generally, when somebody gets a warning, they don't do it again.
So I guess my question would be, you know, assuming that we did post these signs and you know, for the health and safety reasons, would we, you know, I don't know what the fines would cover, but, you know, if you ramp up the administrative court again, and then you have to basically, in order to be effective, either the officers are going to have to be going to Mundelein, wherever court is,
No.
unless it's virtual. These days, I don't know if they've resumed their hearings, or to save the officers that time, we would try to do it locally in administrative court, and then, you know, so there are decisions on how to set it up so that it, you know, it achieves not only the result you want, which is to enforce no parking, but so that we can actually, you know, staff the court appropriately and have the hearings necessary when we start writing, because it sounds like we would be writing a lot of tickets.
I'm not so sure.
Trustee Haber, do you want it? You,
Sorry.
yeah, no, sorry.
Because it's a health and safety issue, dealing with fire trucks and ambulances and things like that, do we absolutely need to have the association's permission to enforce that rule? That would be my number one question. And the number two question is if the answer to number one is yes, we still need the association's rule, do we think that the associations are going to want to do that? Because basically it's going to necessitate them giving us that permission, number one, and number two, potentially leaving them liable for these citations, which they probably don't want, and potentially having to go to court, et cetera. If feel like they have a party and their neighbors park, you know, and someone parks on the street instead of in their driveway, and now they're being ticketed. I'm just wondering if you're going to get the support of the associations. And because also, I think a lot of people in South Riverwoods are really aesthetically minded and may not want multiple parking type signs posted throughout their neighborhood. So those are just some comments. I'm not sure what the answer is. I don't live in South Riverwoods, but my experience is that they don't want a lot of interference.
Well, I can answer one question, and that is that the state law that allows us to enforce parking regulations and traffic regulations in a private area if we have an agreement. And if we don't have an agreement, there's a couple of exceptions. One is for reckless driving, one is
Yeah.
for parking in a
DUI.
designated parking spot, right? I don't know if you feel like you could ticket someone because they were potentially blocking the passageway of the street. Bruce is looking at me like probably not.
No, I mean, the law's pretty clear. Handicap parking, DUI, reckless driving, leaving the scene of a private property accident are the only vehicle enforceable codes that we can use.
So we have, you know, we have a list of all the associations with whom we have these traffic agreements. The agreements pretty much are the same. The template pretty much says that the village will enforce, you know, most of the available traffic and parking restrictions that are available to us to enforce, provided that we and the association agree as to what they want enforced and we post for it. So we could actually, you know, for associations that want this, we already have an existing agreement. We'd simply post in accordance with what that association, the village agreed to post in their area.
So we could do this, so we could do this now.
We could do
So
this now.
If our association said, you know, we really want you to do this, we sign an agreement with the chief, then what we would have to do is post signs along, you know, wherever we're supposed to post signs. And then they could, and whoever violated, we could either call the police and have them come and ticket them, or as the police did their normal rounds, they could ticket them. So,
Right.
so that exists now. Trustee Hollander, you had your hand up?
Yeah, since this applies really only to the private streets and the ones that have SSAs, it seems to me that you could pass the ordinance and the individual SSA, if they want to go ahead and go through this process, put up the signs, they have to decide on their own if they want to do it and go ahead and cite them and call the police. Let the individual SSAs deal with that. We're just giving them permission to go ahead and to call the police if they want to and have the sign posted.
They don't need an ordinance to do this. They can, as the mayor was saying right now, any association that has an agreement with us can simply agree with us. It's just, it could be a written exchange of a letter, an email. We agree, please enforce no parking on our streets under these conditions. And if the village says, okay, we will enforce those, here's how we have to post for it. We have a mechanism in place right now with all of these traffic agreements.
Oh, okay, and then I misunderstood what Chris said. I apologize.
Wait, I'm sorry. So, but we need an ordinance
No,
first?
I know.
So if an association came to you and said, we want you, the village, to enforce no parking on our streets between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. and we signed off on that, Bruce could ticket anybody that parked without an ordinance being drafted by the village?
If it was posted, and I believe we already have an ordinance that says that parking where prohibited as posted is a violation. So we probably, the issue is not having I don't think it's the issue is having the ordinance. I think the issue is having an agreement with the applicable association as to what they want enforced and the willingness to post for it.
signs are the only difference between you being able to have a ticket or giving a ticket in South Riverwoods, for example, because I think Vernon Woods already has an agreement with the police force. All you have to do is say, we want you to do X and then put up the signs and done.
Okay. Good to know.
Is
But I
that
still
right?
think it's
Oh,
an
Chief,
issue.
did I misstate that? Okay.
No, I think just to clarify though, the reason we don't need an ordinance is an association just can't put up a sign and expect the police to enforce it. It has to be approved by the board, but I don't believe it needs an ordinance. Is that right, Bruce? The board would just say, yes, that's something that we'll have the police department enforce.
The agreement says, as between the village and the association, we'll reach agreement as to what you want enforced. And you'll post it. And then the agreement doesn't say exactly how that agreement is to be memorialized, but I think we would just have a board motion or something acknowledging that the board had agreed to enforce in that association these restrictions.
I just looked
Trustee
up.
Haber, yeah.
Yeah, I just looked up the code. So the code is 625 ILCS 511-209. And my reading of it basically gives local authorities that power to enforce vehicular, regulations on private streets of 10 residential apartments, of 10 apartments or single-family residences on written request to the local authority. So it's just a written request, and that's all that's required.
Well, then I don't think we need an ordinance, but I think that, well, never mind. I think it's still an issue on private streets in regards to the fire department and ambulance service. And I don't know if any other associations are having issues, but they may not understand that they can just ask. And if the village is already has an agreement with the police department and that association, that they can just ask and it will be granted, it sounds like. So it might be worth the village just letting the associations know this can be done, because I can't believe that we're the only association that has an issue with this.
How about an article in the Village Voice? Would that do it?
Yeah.
Maybe. Trustee Hollander, you had
Yeah, the only thing I would add to this is if there is any cost, like putting up the signs, that the association has to pay for it, not the village.
We actually done this not that long ago with a parking situation in Thorngate, where they wanted a sign up and they just came to the board, as I recall. Do you remember, Bruce? And made a request and the board approved it, and they put their sign up, and we get calls there once in a while. We enforce the sign. So I don't think it'd be hard. It's just up to each association if they want to do that or not.
Okay. This could be a good use, I mean, if, an article written and reviewed. Maybe put it on the website, because I think it's a little late for the next Village Voice, and probably is more important during the summer months, I would think.
Also, Rick, if your association chooses to do what we're discussing, I did talk to Carissa earlier about the signs, and there are certain specifications about how big the signs are and colors and all of that. And she did look into placement, Carissa, but I don't think you found anything specific about where it has to be placed. Is that right?
Right, the METCD manual, which is basically gives all the regulations for sign usage, size, that type of protocol. They don't have one for no parking. It's discretionary. So typically when we call out these type of signs, it's definitely before, anytime you're turning onto a roadway where a new car is not pulling onto a roadway, they have to see the signs. It's similar to your speed limit signs. So therefore it's just informing them. So, but there is not a regulation saying it needs to be every 300 feet or, at so many feet from an intersection. It basically really just kind of brings it down to the entity to make that decision.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this? Okay, so what my notes are saying is that we'll try to pull an article together for not only the website, but maybe the next Village Voice. Unless there are other suggestions on how to.
Well,
Trustee Hondo.
I think we have a mail list that we might just let the SSAs know, sending out a mail or a postcard to them. That's an also.
Okay.
It's a nice way to keep it updated anyway.
Yeah, they're a challenge. Not all of our streets have associations or organizations that are.
Oh, and they're not all active,
Functional.
even if they have them. Some are very inactive, so.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
all
problem.
true. All true. Okay. If there's no further discussion, are there any other questions for our chief? Okay, moving forward. A report on cleanup day and plant sale. Deputy Clerk Baum, would you care to report on that, please?
Yes, I think it was a wonderful event. It was definitely a collaborative effort. I want to thank the RPC for a wonderful plant sale. As we mentioned, all of the plants were sold, and I think everyone enjoyed Josh's and the band North Shore Line, who played for only a free lunch. So that was a treat. And I ordered food for 75, and we ended up serving 121 people. So I apologize to the people at the end of the line who didn't get buns, but they did get food. So it was much bigger than we had anticipated, which is a good problem to have. Overall, it was a lovely, lovely day.
And the tree, Pat's tree is looking good. It's leafing out and it's right in front of you. You can see it quite clearly from the front door of Village Hall. So we put a little sign there, and it's dedicated to our village engineer, Pat Glenn. So when next year at Village Hall, you might want to trot on out to the center a little bit and take a look at his tree. And how about Evan Shore giving away saplings or little bushes or whatever it was that he was giving away.
They were button bushes.
Button.
He couldn't get the saplings, but the sentiment was the same, that as the button bush grows, you could remember our beloved village engineer. So I think that was very sweet, and we thank Evan as well for his participation.
Okay, well, before we get into the meat of the meeting, I did want to report on the state of the village, and really, it's really just a kind of a reflection on the past year. and letting you know what I intend to concentrate on in the next year. So, and I did make notes and stuff, so sorry about your luck. It's been just days over 1 year since I've been here. It feels like a lot longer, believe me. But I can honestly report that the village is no worse off. So we're still quite secure financially, and projections, and we all know, have shown us that we need to pay attention to developing more and varied sources of revenue. Thornton's is a good move for us. COVID put a damper on community events. We did have a couple of Brushwood story times. We had the grand opening of the Flatwoods Heritage Center last fall, and cleanup day and the plant sale were terrific. And depending on Katie's goodwill, we have some ideas in the hopper for the remainder of 2022. We continue to be more than well supported by our consulting professionals, the village engineer and the village attorney in particular. While we will always be grateful for the legacy of our village engineer, Pat Glenn, the dedication and expertise of our new village engineer, Carissa Smith, has been remarkable, and we are so grateful. Our village attorney, Bruce Huvard, is always the go-to guy for all things Riverwoods, history, perspective, records, and for me as an advisor and a great leveler. And finally, our staff. I really have to say this. It's absolutely remarkable to me that our staff is so dedicated, so willing to step up and figure it out, and so willing to have patience with a boss that gets so frustrated. I am very, very grateful. There was a lot going on in the past year, and some highlights of past and current and ongoing events. Just very quickly, Thornton's, the continuing saga of the 37 acres, the integration of the Lauterbach and Amen team, Baby Vegas, planning for the transition of our financial system. We've got an item on the agenda about that. The infamous water meter project, opening of the Flatwoods Heritage Center, an incredible number of building related problems. I'm not even going to start with that. Opening of the police negotiations, which are continuing, and apparently we're heading for mediation. Consideration of the path maintenance, not just the village, the campus paths, but Deerfield Road and Riverwoods Road. Play area development is on the road. The hazardous tree project nicely fell in the first year as well. Develop an initiation of the water main project, something that's I find very important. Development of policies and continuing development of policies of accounts payable, late utility payments, which is kind of an interesting bug. Renewing our expired contract with Lake Shore greeted me in the first couple of months of my term. And most importantly, our own personnel issues. I spoke to you earlier about the need for a village manager or a village administrator. That project went forward, and first we focused on the current staff positions, descriptions, and compensation, something that hadn't been done since 2017. Those current findings caused me to make adjustments immediately to the compensation of our staff that has been stepping up, figuring it out, and showing up. These were adjustments to bring them into line with current ranges. Needless to say, those were not downward adjustments, and they were well-deserved. As you can imagine from my list, my attention has been diverted from time to time. It simply underscores the necessity of a village manager. And as you all know, there are a number of arguments for employing professionals to execute that which the governing body decides to do, separating governance from management. The village needs a mayor that can focus on visioning and community development now that we're again confronted with unknowns on our border. And Bruce went through the list of them: Baxter's, Walters Kluwer, the 37 acres, and so forth. Historically, the village has reveled in its unique position as a woodland oasis and an oasis in the developing areas around it. It's isolated itself rather than planned for isolation. And many times we found ourselves in a defensive position. I don't want to be in a defensive position again. I'm going to be asking the board to consider another position of change in addition to the village manager. And that would be removing the position of village clerk as an elected position. Our clerk has recently resigned effective July 1st. And as you know, Katie has stepped up into the role of deputy clerk. So we are not without an acting clerk. I'm not planning on appointing anyone to fill the clerk's term. There is a bit of work and research to be done, and I'm working with counsel on that, but this is the direction that I will explore. In the next year, I'm going to be focusing on moving forward on 2 goals. The extension of water mains to the village that currently not being served, part of the village that's not being served, and management. If I succeed in at least one of those, next year I'm going to be able to say that the village is again not worse off. So just wanted to let you know what I've been seeing, where I want to go, and I hope I have your support in doing that. So without going further on that, I think we can move on to new business or visitors wishing to address the board. We have some visitors this evening. Anybody want to address the board? Okay. Did we have any emails?
We
come
do
in
not.
to the board? Okay.
No.
Okay, then moving on. New business. First item is the approval of a change order with the contract with BSNA to provide for electronic, timesheets in the amount of $5,960. Do I have a motion? Was that a motion, Mike Haber, trustee Haber?
Motion for discussion purposes.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion purposes.
Okay, discussion, please.
What is it?
And why wasn't it? Oops.
Oh, no. I think we've got our lead from Lauterbach and Eamon with us. So Nicole, can you go into a little bit more detail on this, please?
Sure. So this is a timesheet module. Right now, we are having employees fill out either timesheets on paper or in Excel, and then I know Chief is manually entering it into an Excel sheet and keeping track of it, and then our accountant is manually entering everything into our current payroll system. And so instead of doing everything manually in Excel, while we're trying to, increase our efficiencies and better our processes, we would have the employees enter their timesheets directly into this application. And then instead of, the accountant or chief entering all of this in manually, and then it goes to, the mayor or chief to approve, and then it's manually or it's automatically uploaded into the payroll system. And so it leaves little room for error. And I think this would increase our efficiency and then obviously decrease the amount of time that we're spending on payroll and chief is spending on entering all this time in. And so it's, it wasn't included originally, I believe, because we were doing it ourselves. And so it wasn't brought up in the original discussion when we were talking about BSNA. But I think it would be very beneficial to the village.
Trustee Haber.
So I want to just ask Nicole, have you used this before, this timesheets plugin? Or module?
I have not used the cloud version, but I've used the desktop application, and all of my BSNA clients use it and love it. And
so
it's, oh, sorry.
So do you think we really need 3 days of training? I mean, is it that difficult of a module to understand?
I definitely don't think we need 3 days of training. I think they just like on the original contract, they put extra training days on there for cushion. And even talking to Kevin, who's the account executive, has mentioned multiple times that we probably won't use all of the training days, which is the majority of the cost.
And also,
and then,
what
go ahead.
about the travel expenses? Do we really have many expenses for travel related to our employees? For that
I-
module? We really need that module.
It's on-site training. So I'm assuming that's the training for the trainer. Those are expenses for the trainer. So they're
Oh,
gonna,
I thought it was like a travel component to the timesheet module.
no, my guess would be it's for traveling for the trainer that's gonna be on site for 3 days. So airfare, hotel room, whatever
it.
is necessary.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
So,
Trustee Jamerson.
well, so I have a couple questions. First of all, I mean, the village hall has 5 employees, 6 employees.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Bruce
And the police
has,
department, yeah,
has more. I'll
Yeah.
give you
yeah,
that.
sure.
Is this are they going to be adding this time in on a mobile device? Is that what, I mean, is that the theory?
No, they would enter their time in at the end of each day on their computer.
On their computer.
Or
Okay, so first of all, I was going to make the same comment Trustee Haber said. You know, $4,000 of this $6,000 cost is training and travel expenses, which I think is ludicrous. And it doesn't say anywhere on this that it's not to exceed. So it's showing a net change in cost. So I would have an issue with whether they were there for 1 day or 3 days, giving them $3,000. I'm also, I wasn't in favor of this software in the first place, and I'm not in favor of this change. And the third question I have is, this says change number 2. Do we know what change number 1 was? Because unless it came up at a meeting that I wasn't at, I don't remember change number 1. And if anybody else can remember what change number 1 was and what the amount was, I'm just concerned that this was, well, I'll leave it at that. Does anybody know what change number 1 was?
Change number 1 was, I don't recall exactly the detail, but it was definitely under $1,500, I believe. And so it came within my spending limit. And it was, again, to support the transition.
It was
change
so that
number 1. Oh,
building
sorry.
files could be transferred over.
Correct. Change number 1 is in regards to the community development module. And it was so we could do a full conversion and bring all of the history in that module over into the new module.
Maybe it was 1,700, I don't recall, but it
And
was
that wasn't-
definitely under 2,000.
And that wasn't part of the original bid?
It was not. It was just a database setup.
Okay.
Trustee Dickon, you had a question earlier.
Yeah, more of a comment also in regards to the on-site training. We kind of ran into a similar situation when we were working on the website, and they also came back to us with a pretty high fee for on-site training and travel expenses, yada, 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 which ended up being literally a fraction of the initially quoted expense because everything was done virtually. So nobody actually traveled. Everything, all the training was done over Zoom. So I'm wondering if the actual physical travel and the physical on-site presence is necessary in this regard.
I can definitely ask them. I know some of our training days for the other modules will be done remotely, and they will not be on site for them. And so I'll ask if that's a possibility.
How about if
for
we
the
bring this
timesheet
back
module.
to you? Trustee Jamerson?
I'd also like to ask about the efficiency piece of this. With the exception of Bruce, the rest of the employees in the village hall are currently doing time on, how are they doing their time right now?
They enter it into an Excel worksheet.
And then are we doing the payroll internally, or are we having an outside service?
Outside service.
And
So-
when we get this new software, we're still going to have the outside service. We're not going to be doing payroll internally. We're going to be doing it. We're going to be processing checks internally.
So we have it's called Howard Simon, I believe. And we process payroll through this cloud application. So we manually enter in timesheets, we run payroll reports, review the payroll reports. And then through BSNA, we'll be doing it ourselves through this cloud application. And so we'll be just importing the timesheets. So it'll be a faster, more efficient step. And then we'll be submitting taxes, which Howard Simon does for us now, but we'll be doing that ourselves, as well as all the other withholding payments.
So, Chief, how much time do you spend doing payroll?
Quite a bit. Maybe I could take a minute just to walk you through our process. Maybe that would be helpful. And then compare that to what we'd be doing if we had the timesheets. So right now, we have full-time employees and part-time employees. The full-time employees are basically salaried. And so they're getting the same base pay every pay period. So that's not hard. But whenever they work overtime, they turn in a paper timesheet. And then the sergeant or I take that paper timesheet and we manually enter it into a spreadsheet, which totals all the all the overtime. With the part-timers, whenever the sergeant is done making the schedule for the part-timers, he then goes to that same spreadsheet and he enters in all the hours that the part-timers are going to be working for that pay period. So he's doing all that manually. And then if the part-timers have any changes, then he goes in and changes it. If they have to stay over for a couple hours, they have to put in a paper timesheet, and he's manually entering that. Then after everything's entered, I send the spreadsheet over to payroll in Village Hall, and then he takes all of those figures and he puts it into the Howard Simon software. Then after he does that, he sends me a report, which then I compare to what I sent him to make sure it's accurate. And then I give approval for the police payroll. That's how we've been doing it. Before Nicole became involved, Laura Buchanan, I should say, I was actually about to call Howard Simon to ask them about if they had some kind of timesheet program that might save us some work. But then I had in discussions with Nicole, I realized that the plan was for us to eventually go to this new company for payroll. So I held off on those discussions. I don't know how much it would have been, but what would happen now and Nicole did a demonstration for me early on with this new company. What would happen now is the full-timers would still stay salaried. And if the full-timer worked overtime, they would enter their own time. And then at the end of the pay period, I would have to approve all the overtime, and they would have to have the reason for the overtime. And they don't really work overtime without my say so. They contact me and say, I need to stay for this, for most things. So I'm just so all I'm doing is I'm looking at the payroll once. They're entering their own time. The part-timers will enter all their time that they work regularly, and the full-timers will just be entering their own overtime. Sergeant or I will be approving it. And once it's approved, it's ready for Village Hall to just also approve, I guess, and then, send that to have the checks made out. So it would simplify the process quite a bit. If we don't get this, my spreadsheet would go away, which is fine. I made that when I started here because everything was done manually with paper and in a adding machine. So we're better than we were with the spreadsheet, but I guess what would have to happen is, Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, the sergeant and I would just have to be pre-entering everybody's time in or overtime as it comes in. Is that right? And then we after we manually enter everything, then we'd have to do some kind of approval when it's all done. Does that sound right, Nicole?
If we didn't have the timesheet module, we would still be using the Excel sheet. And you would send it to Roger, and then Roger would manually enter it in because he would have.
Okay, so I wouldn't have any access to the software. I would just be doing the spreadsheet like I've been doing. Okay.
Correct.
So nothing would change. Okay.
I just have one question and now
Sure.
we'll stop. Why wasn't this thought about when we did the original contract for this?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
It's my understanding that it was.
Yeah.
I thought that was included. And then when we were
Right.
having some discussions for them to start extracting data and working on our software, they mentioned the modules that we were getting and they didn't mention this. And that's when we realized I don't know where it got dropped, but it wasn't included.
Okay, thank you.
sounds like there's an issue with the on-site and the travel. Are the trustees comfortable with what we've presented them, or would you prefer that we go back and speak with these folks about these two issues? Or third option, eliminate those two from the bid and approve only a smaller number?
A question.
Yes, absolutely, trustee Dickon.
So will this be a recurring fee in terms of hosting? And there's a $750 project management and implementation planning. I'm assuming that's a one-time fee.
Yeah.
So the annual fees are the $1,200, which is at the bottom, which is the annual fees. It's the timesheet module and then the hosting fees.
And then there's a personnel management of $1,100.
Yeah, so the
Is that on
1,100
top of
plus
the 5960?
that's already included in the 5960. So the annual fees after the implementation is $1,200 going forward.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Trustee Jamerson, go ahead.
Now I have another question. So,
Sure, no, go ahead, please.
so the annual fee is basically what they're charging us now. So they're basically charging us every year for the same thing. Now, that's not the case with the rest of the software. The rest of the software, the annual maintenance fee is less, I believe.
The annual service fees for the other modules range from $1,500 to $1,800 annually. This is actually the least expensive.
Right, but what I'm saying is that one that's 1,500, for instance, is not costing us 1,500 now. It's costing us more than 1,500. Yes, no?
You're talking startup fees, you mean?
Never mind.
Okay,
I'm not comfortable signing, having anybody sign something that says we're going to pay $4,000 in fees that we're not sure we're going to have to pay. So I think my opinion is that this needs to go back to them and they need to tell us exactly what they're going to charge us for, or they're going to give us a not to exceed number for virtual training or on-site training. I think that most likely this could be done virtually if that sounds like the way the rest of the training has gone. I'm not comfortable signing a change order for something that we may not need and then have to, try and ask them to give it back to us.
I agree with that.
I agree as well.
okay. We'll be back to you. So I think we had a motion on the floor for discussion purposes only, but we probably need to either, okay, parliamentarians, can we withdraw the motion? Is that how this works? Trustee Hollander?
This is, if we agree that this is something, a module that we need, and the discussion is related purely to the cost of training, it seems to me that we might be able to give a number where they can either do it virtually, or the training expense should not exceed an X amount of dollars, and not have this come back to us, if that's the objection. I mean, I don't hear the objection to the actual need for the module itself. It's the training.
Okay,
I'd actually like to look at the prior contract and just see like if it was actually in there or impliedly in there or something. I'm going to move to table this.
Okay, is there a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call on the motion to table.
Trustee Dickon,
Aye.
trustee Eastman,
Aye.
trustee Haber,
Aye.
trustee Hollander,
Aye.
trustee Jamerson,
Aye.
trustee Clayton.
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion is tabled, and I believe that means we don't need to deal with the original motion at this point. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Village Hall Campus, approval of a contract for maintenance and replacement of paths on the Village Hall campus not to exceed $92,000. This is I think this was a bit higher than what we expected the first time, so I'm going to ask our village engineer to please discuss this bid.
So we received one bid from DK Contractors to do replace the mulch paths with the granite limestone screenings. And the cost came in, the two items that came in significantly higher than the estimated cost. One was the topsoil, which came in at $102 a square yard, where it's typically only $6 to $8 a square yard. Reaching out to the contractor, they've stated that it's because they have to hand place it. I disagree. A lot of restoration, you have to hand place the topsoil. You just can't dump a wheelbarrow of soil somewhere and just leave it. And the other item that came in high was the granite screenings. Obviously, that's a very specialized material. We can only go off of, past information that we've received. So that one came in as high. I recommended that we take out the restoration. I believe there's not going to be too much restoration since they're just peeling back the mulch and then putting back the limestone screening. And the nature of the area will kind of be overgrown, and anything that disturb is going to be kind of brought into the whole natural way of the pathway. So that's why the original bid, I recommended taking out any and all costs for the restoration, because especially with the high topsoil amount, I did not see it necessary to actually proceed forward with restoration with the nature of this project.
Trustee Jamerson?
So I have a couple questions. The mobilization charge seems excessive from a contractor standpoint. You guys figured $3,000 and they figured $16,000. So I'm concerned about that, number one. And then number two, so when did this go? When was this advertised and when was this bid? Because it seems to be really, because we just talked about this, it seems to me at the last meeting. So it seems like that was a very short window. Am I remembering that incorrectly? Was it the meeting before last?
No, I think it was last meeting, and we went out to bid very quickly after that.
Then
But I think the amount of time given for a response might have been the same as what we normally would have done.
Well, I mean, if our last meeting was two weeks ago, 2 weeks is, I mean,
Wait a minute, let me check.
No, it went out April 28th and it was opened April 12th. So that's your 10 days. That's your minimum IDOT requirement for bidding purposes.
okay, well, and we only got one contractor that was even interested in it because, and it could be because the window was so short. It might.
April 19 was our last, when it was done. Yeah, thanks, sorry.
Right, but it was, the bidding period was very short. And my feeling is that, for good or bad, work is starting to pick up. People are asking for a lot of bidding is happening right now, at least in our industry. And if somebody asked me to bid something and I had 10 days to do it, and I probably would have not bid it. So it's just, I'm concerned about something that's so much over your estimates, because typically your estimates are pretty right on. Or a lot of times they're a little high, and we get better numbers. And in this case, we got one contractor to bid on it. from Wisconsin, which is probably one of the reasons why the mobilization is so high. So I'm just concerned about those 2 points, which actually probably are the same point. So.
Speaking of mobilization, so mobilization is an IDOT requirement for any of our, for the specifications of the bid. And typically the mobilization is a lump sum item that's supposed to be meant for obviously them bringing in their equipment.
I know what it's for.
Right, and what we've seen a lot of times on unit price jobs, when you have very limited lump sums, they have a lot of overhead putting together bids. And so they throw that overhead cost into these lump sum items because they know that they're going to be approved. You're not going to not approve mobilization because they obviously showed up on the site and they're doing the work. So mobilization has become more of, we can only anticipate a percentage of the total. That's what usually mobilization is, but we really have no control on a lump sum item, which they can basically throw anything into this general definition of mobilization. So that's another thing that it could be that they're from Wisconsin. We've worked with DK, they're right over the border, they're in Kenosha. But I agree that mobilization usually isn't that high, but I have a feeling that they threw a lot of their overhead costs. There's cost to put, a bid bond together. There's cost obviously for their company to put the bid actually together. So they throw a lot of that cost into lump sums because they can recoup the cost. So, and like I said, there was actually 7 companies that picked up bids. And we're seeing that there is actually a lot less people bidding projects lately because there's just so much work that they've already absorbed and they don't have the workers to do the work. So like I said, there were 7 entities that picked up for bid and only 1 ended up bidding it. So we did have some stipulation of the bid package, but only 1 person put the bid together.
Well, and that, I mean, that falls into my point that there wasn't enough time for people to bid it, but okay. Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the contract for maintenance and replacement?
Is that with the expectation that we would attempt to negotiate some of the amounts, that it's a not to exceed amount, and we would, Chrissy, you were going to try, maybe I didn't understand this. Did you think you had an opportunity to still approach the contractor on a few of these items?
They're not going to budge on the topsoil costs. I've talked to them. That's just the cost that they're putting. So with a unit price bid like this, we basically would just state no restoration, which would take out those light items.
If you look at the attachment, it started at $107,000. And Gewalt has said that the recommended contract amount is much lower. And so the not to exceed number is 92 rather than 108.
Okay, so.
Yeah, but the 92 is because we eliminated items. It's not that
Right.
they reduced their pricing.
No, yeah,
I'd like to see, more bidders. I think I agree with Trustee Jamerson. It would be nice to see at least 3 bidders on this project as opposed to just
Okay.
taking the one and only. And if it means having to go out for rebid and hoping that if we don't get more, then maybe we're stuck and then we have to do this. But I would hope that we'd get multiple bidders.
okay. Trustee Clayton, I think you had your hand up.
Well, I was going to ask whether Trustee Jamerson was in favor of rebidding the job. And it seems to me, this is a project that's near and dear to my heart. But I do believe that under the circumstances, we should probably try to rebid it.
To answer your question, Mike, yes, I mean, I would like to see at least another bidder so we can have some comparison. 3 would be wonderful, but 2 would be, 2 would be at least, and who knows if we bid it another time, as Carissa will probably tell us, these guys may not bid it again. And then we may not have any bidders. But you know, I don't know. I would like to see, I would like to see at least one more bidder. That's just my opinion.
Is that the sentiment of the other trustees? Trustee Eastman, I see you nodding your head. Trustee Dickon? Trustee Hollander? Okay. Well, Chris, so we can go out to bid again then. Okay. Next item. Approval of a project for the maintenance work on the Deerfield Road path not to exceed $205,000. And I think this deserves some discussion as well. The alternative that was put forth, we have three alternatives. It would be asphalt screening, which is crushed stone, or removal. And I don't know if status quo is an option or not. We can talk about that. But the option that you're seeing is for the maintenance work on the path, which means putting down crushed stone rather than gravel, and certainly not removing it. So let's just open this for discussion. Carissa, would you like to define this a little bit better than I have, please?
Sure. So we all know that Deerfield Road is currently in the docket to get reconstructed, widened, and have a brand new path from the western limits to the eastern limits of the village. With that, the one item that comes up is we don't have a finite date. The county just entered into phase 2. They have a lot of easements they have to obtain. Then they'll start their final design. And then once they get to the final design, then they put the project on their letting schedule, which is their bidding schedule. Just like the state, the county has set dates along the whole year that they put projects out for bidding. So with discussion about this, the question arises, well, when are the new paths going to be in? And at this point, my educated opinion would be they're probably not going to start any type of construction till probably this time or a little bit later in 2024. And that's starting construction. And so they're going to start obviously removal. They're going to get the roadway in first, because obviously that's the main priority. Then they'll work on the paths. So realistically, this project's 12 to 18 months. So the new pathways as it currently stands potentially could not be usable to 2025. So you're talking about at least an ideal situation, 3 years that until we see new paths along Deerfield. So I just wanted to discuss really, everyone, people are like, well, do we need to do it because they're redoing Deerfield? They're not doing it in the next year. They're not even going to start within the next, 2 years, 24 months. It's really going, the ideal situation would be that they let it in 2024 and start construction probably midsummer to fall of 2024, starting with the roadways. Since I have not seen a phase 2 plan. I haven't even seen a preliminary phase 2 plan. It's really hard to say that they're going to flip this around and be able to start construction in less than a year. Just due to the fact that they still have to get easement agreements with numerous homeowners along Deerfield. So I just wanted to give an idea of, I wish I could come in and say, yes, they're definitely going to start construction this date. That means that, we're really only talking about 18 months of dealing with the current situation of the pathways. But unfortunately, there's no finite date when this project's actually going to start up.
Trustee Hollander.
Yeah, I understand that the new paths wouldn't be in, but are you saying that we'd be able to use Deerfield Road path during construction?
No, they'll probably shut everything down.
So we won't be able to use Deerfield Road path probably by 2024. Is that correct?
They'll keep it open until the construction widens. So they'll probably go through and do some temporary pavement to get traffic around certain areas. And then once they get the road set and they start doing grading, you'll probably be able to finish out again, saying they start June of 2024. you'll probably be able to get use out of those pathways for the summer months. But I would probably say 3 or 4 months after the start of construction, they'll probably just shut down the paths, because at that point, there's going to be a lot of moving machinery. They probably, for safety wise, they probably don't want people walking within the construction zone.
Well,
Trustee Hollander, please, yes.
yeah, I have a strong objection to spending this type of money for something that's we would be able to use literally only for several months. If we get it in even within this year, we're talking being able to use it for 2023 and maybe for part of 2024. And then we don't have use of it anymore. It just seems too temporary to me, which is why I asked that we divide up Deerfield Road separate from Riverwoods Road, because they're two totally different situations. Anyway, that's my feeling, that it's too temporary a situation to spend this kind of money on it.
Trustee Jamerson?
I agree with Henry, and I would also say that I have a feeling that once they put the silt fences up on either side of the road, that path is going to be inside the silt fences, and they're probably going to close it down as soon as they put the silt fences up, which is at the very beginning of construction. It doesn't mean that it won't be maybe accessible, but I'm guessing that they're probably going to wish that people don't use it. I agree with Henry. Based on the cost estimate here, the pavement removal is about $12,000. Obviously there's mobilization and other things in there, but the bulk of the cost is obviously putting the new limestone screenings down, which based on the previous bid, the limestone screenings were 25% more than the probable cost estimate. So that number could go up by another $25,000. Or if we had more bidders, maybe it would come down. But I agree with Henry. It's a lot of money to spend for 18 months. On the other hand, I do think something needs to be done because it's in the shape it's in. So
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Trustee Hollander?
Yeah, this wasn't included in the packet, but it's, we also got a bid in order to just take the path out and leave it with grass for 70,000, which is certainly a lot less money than what this is. It's half the cost. There is a question also that has been brought up regarding liability. If we know the path has been not in good shape and we've been dealing with this for years, so it's not new, is there a liability for us to just leave it until the new paths go in? I think those are two separate questions. One is it worthwhile taking out the path and just making it grass for 70,000, or can we leave it in without a significant liability until the new multi-use paths are in?
Well, on a liability issue,
Okay, go ahead.
on a
Counsel, please.
liability issue, there is a difference between failing to adhere to an operations and maintenance plan that you have, your duty to maintain your paths in a safe, passable condition, and a policy judgment that it doesn't make any sense to spend this kind of money because you know the path is going to be replaced. And the village enjoys quite a bit more immunity, protection, I guess I should say, under the Tort Immunity Act for a policy decision like that. I know that this is how our insurance company is viewing it as well, because we had an accident last summer, or an alleged accident.
Yeah.
And the claims adjuster for our carrier called and spoke with me. And when I explained that the board had debated what to do about this path, as we're doing tonight, and had concluded it made no sense as a policy to address it because of these reasons, the claims adjuster said that that's a very strong argument for us. He ended up settling the case for a de minimis amount just to make it go away, but that would be normal insurance practice. So, if we were to do nothing, or at least make a policy decision not to replace it or repair it in this way, then I would just want us to make a note of this, that this is the reason why. It'll be recorded in the minutes, and that will accord us a degree of protection under the current holdings and cases under the Tort Immunity Act. Now, whether it makes sense for us to not do anything when people may still use it and we can't, is there some way to keep them from using it in a way that endangers themselves? That I don't know. That's a question. Does it, is it actually safer if you rip it up and plant grass? Does that make it, then you're taking an active role, but the thing, then I would caution you, don't take an active role to do a halfway job, is what I guess I'm saying. Better to make a policy decision that you don't have a good option than to start something and then kind of do it, So that's kind of the two poles we have.
Trustee Haber.
So this has been an issue that, I've raised multiple times, and we've talked about, one of the rationales for not doing this has always been, for the last several years, Deerfield Road. So, I've been harping on this for at least a couple of years, and it's always this issue with Deerfield Road. And I don't disagree with the concept of, why would we spend $200,000 on something that we're, not going to get the use of on any kind of long-term basis? That makes certainly economic sense. However, conversely, the village, as trustees, we know of a situation that exists in the village right now that is hazardous. It's a hazardous situation, notwithstanding that we may not have liability because of the Tort Immunity Act, because of a policy determination not to fix it. We also know as trustees who have an obligation to the village as a whole, that we have a dangerous situation there. There are gaps in the asphalt that a tire can go in, and you could fall on your bicycle, and it's used by bikers, and someone could have a brain hemorrhage as a result of it, and they could be a vegetable. We don't know what can happen. Maybe there was a settled case for de minimis because the injuries were de minimis. But if someone, God forbid, has a serious bicycle accident because they get stuck in one of those ruts, it's not going to settle for de minimis. And even if we have no liability, I wouldn't want that to happen to one of our village residents if we know that there's a dangerous situation. So I don't think we can just sit back and do nothing. I think we need to do something. And if that means literally closing the path, if that's the consensus, that path needs to be closed because it's that dangerous. And again, I don't know if everyone on the board has walked that path, but I would encourage everyone to do it, because I think if you do, you will see that there are really, really bad segments that are in very, very poor condition that are dangerous. So I think something needs to be done.
Would you support removing the path?
I would support anything that addresses the problem that exists. Closing it, removing it, installing something, whatever is that the trustees all want to agree to, but something. We can't just sit back and say, Deerfield Road's going to be done in 3 more years, so let's just sit back and do nothing and just let it continue to deteriorate and pray that nobody gets hurt. That's not the answer. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Is it possible to close it? Let me just ask as a practical matter, would that involve putting, for example, barriers and at a number of places, not just at each end, but at a number of places so it would make it really difficult to say travel on a wheeled, bicycle or wheeled vehicle, basically make us, someone could still walk around a lot if they wanted, but it would be very inconvenient for anybody. Is that something we could do feasibly?
What are you asking?
Yeah.
I don't,
Carissa,
I don't.
Carissa, does that sound, how would we?
Yes, well,
how do we
yes,
do
you
that?
could
Trustee
put
Jamerson,
barricades.
yeah.
You could put barricades, Bruce, but I will tell you that when the government shut down in Washington several years ago, we happened to be there for a convention, which was the worst time in the world to go. But they had literally put barricades across the National Mall sidewalks so that people wouldn't go in there because it was closed. And I can tell you that there were people all over the place. So putting barricades up is not the right answer. I think that if we're gonna do something, we need to do something, and that's either tear the path up and put grass down, or put this package down. And, you know, if my druthers right now would be to just tear it up and put grass down.
Trustee Hollander.
Yeah, the figure on that, I mentioned before, but just to make certain everybody remembered it, it's about 70,000. Take the path out and replace it with grass.
Yeah, $71,125. That was the estimate. Someone willing to make a motion?
I'll make the motion
What would that motion be?
that we remove the path and replace it with grass at a cost not to exceed $72,000.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Do we have any further discussion? Trustee Eastman.
I guess what I would ask is, do we know, I guess thinking about using that path and how my family and I have used that would be to get over to the outdoor pool in Deerfield as well as the middle school. Do we know if any people utilize it in that way? I mean, because I think about that and, you know, middle schoolers and or people using it, or is it basically just used by, you know, random recreational bikers? I mean, it's an important way to get to things that might be important. And I guess my thought is, before we go ahead and say, let's rip it up, do we have a better sense of the utility, you know, to our people in our village? I mean, granted, there's, you know, probably not that high of a number, but at the same time, it does connect some important things.
I see a lot of dog walkers, I will say that.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's not, you know, dog walkers, you know, maybe, but I'm thinking more access to actually get somewhere, right? I mean, you can walk your dog someplace else, but if your, you know, kid was using it, you know, your 8th grader or your, you know, to get over to the middle school or over to the pool in the summer, you know, under their own power, that might be something different. Now, I don't know how many people actually do that. I've seen some, but I don't have a good sense as to whether it is utilized in that way or not.
Yeah, I don't know that we have anything more than anecdotal evidence, you know,
Right.
what we've seen from time to time.
Right. But I mean, to me, it seems like that's, you know, kind of a drastic step to entirely rip it up. But I mean, I fully understand the liability issues as well as the cost of replacing it for a short amount of time.
I don't think we've talked about repair because I think the damage or the use is just throughout the pathway. It's not.
Yeah, it's not like it's one area that you could replace and it would be better, right?
Is the reseeding, it's not actually grass, is it? What is it the proposal would reseed with? Because it's not grass that somebody has to water and fertilize and.
We'd put down probably some sort of a quick seed mix that would come up with, you know, eventually it first comes up with your oats, but then it'll come back with grass. Just because we'll be probably out of the growing season, mid-June through the 3rd week of August is actually, you're not supposed to plant seeds or grass because obviously it's dry and you'd have to continuously water it. So realistically, it'd be something that's installed afterwards, but it's a quick oat grow to get some sort of germination for erosion control issues. And then your grass sprouts up after the oats pop up. But so it's your typical restoration with seeds. And yes, then someone will have to maintain it, whomever's been maintaining the, you know, grass adjacent to the pathways.
Oh.
It's running through people's yards right now, Bruce. It's
Yeah.
literally running through people's yards. So I
Yeah.
don't think that's going to be an issue of who's going to
Okay.
cut the grass. And where
Yeah.
it's not running through people's yards, it's on the, you know, towards Port Wine. It's buried in the, you know, the side of the road. So if that doesn't get mowed, it's not going to be the end of the world. I mean,
Yeah, it could turn a little muddy. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Again, the motion is to remove the path
I
completely.
think if we actually go forward with this motion, I think we have to educate the villagers as to why we're doing this as well. I think we have to tell them that we're taking out this path and it's temporary, but that ultimately a new path will be put in. But this is a temporary fix. And I don't know if that's something else that should go in the village voice, but because I think there'll be a bit of a backlash from the community if suddenly the path is missing.
Yeah, if we had more people at the village board meetings, maybe it would be a little easier, but so some kind of communication. Do you want to do a communication in advance of passing this motion? Do you want to pass the motion and then communicate? And if we get a lot of, I mean, we don't have to start the project immediately. Trustee Eastman?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was gonna say is, isn't that kind of putting, the cart before the horse? Wouldn't we want to get at least the pulse of the village? And, even if people don't weigh in, we can assume that, your lack of weighing in is assent to it, right? I mean, rather than proceed and then say, well, this is what we've decided, right? I mean, I don't think you have to hold that step out for that long, but I think it makes sense to, cover that base and give people a chance to weigh in.
Well,
Trustee Jamerson?
To Trustee Eastman's comment, the people that are going to respond to a question about removing the path are going to be the people who use the path.
Good point.
They're all going to say, keep the path.
Good point.
No matter what it costs. So
Yeah, good point.
I think that's a wasted step. But I will say this, first of all, what we're looking at here is the engineer's opinion of a probable cost. This has not been even let out for bid. They haven't drawn any drawings yet. Even with just digging it up and reseeding it, they're going to have to put some kind of documents together for it to go out to bid. And as we all know, I don't believe in short bidding periods. So it's going to take a little longer than 10 days to do this. So I think we have some time. I do think we should alert the village people, and maybe even put some signs on the path itself that say this path is going to be removed by, on starting such and such a date, once we know when that date is going to be. I think that would only be, prudent and responsible of us. So
Seems sensible.
Yeah, going out to bid, would you want to go out to bid for the removal? Or go out to bid for the repair replacement with the screening?
Well, if you do it with repair, replacement and screening, do we have to have engineering done first so that they know what they're bidding? And that's going to cost, right?
Right.
Whereas if you do removal, it's going to be significantly less expensive, I assume, right, Clarissa?
Carissa can answer that.
It'll be a little bit less documentation, but realistically, what we try to do to make it more efficient is that we create just like a typical cross section and we use aerials just to try to minimize upfront costs for the bidding. So you might save on, a couple hours here and there because of just generating the detail for the screenings. But it's not a huge overall cost. It's not really that overbearing. I mean, for the village hall, we turned around that documentation in 2 days. So it's really just more of you guys just let us know exactly what time frame you want and we'll adhere to what you feel comfortable with. We can make whichever work. And cost wise, it's not that much more to do screening or not. We're still putting together the same bulk documentation.
Would that hold true even if you did like alternate bids, like, removal, grinding and resurfacing and then this option, removing and replacing with screening?
So we can do like a base bid to remove everything and do restoration. That could be the base bid. And then the alternate would be to remove the cost of the base bid for the restoration and replace it with the screenings to get an idea of the cost difference between the two. You can put that alternate in if you're curious to see what really the cost comes between the two. That really doesn't, that's no big deal to put together.
Trustee Jamerson, you had a comment?
Yeah, I would like to see, I mean, if you're not against that, I would like to, I think that would make sense for us to have both real figures to work with, and then we can make a decision on which way we want to go once we see what the real costs are.
I agree.
Okay.
I'll move to table this as well.
Okay. So in the
Well,
meantime,
well,
you
we
would
need
like
to
to
take
see,
it up.
I'm sorry, Trustee
Wait,
Jamerson.
before we move to table it, do we need to take action with Carissa to tell her to?
I think we first need to move to table the original motion, and then we can do.
You can just withdraw
withdraw
your
it.
motion if you want, Michael, because I don't think you're gonna
Oh, that's
make
right.
that
They'll
motion.
never come back. Probably it'll come back differently. So I'll move to
Yeah.
withdraw the motion.
And
Okay,
I think I seconded it, so I will remove my
Okay.
second.
so you would, so now with the
We
wish
need
of
to
the
vote- we
trustees
need
is
to-
to see,
We need to vote on that. Don't we?
vote on
No,
what? The
no.
withdrawal?
We're not on withdrawal.
I
Okay.
don't think so.
I mean,
All right, fine.
What I think the trustees would want, and
Okay.
tell me if I'm wrong, everybody else, but I think we would like to see, as Carissa suggested, a base bid, which would be to remove the existing path and replace it with dirt and seed. And then an alternate to not replace it with dirt and seed, but replace it with the crushed limestone screenings. That's what I think we should direct GHA to do.
I agree.
And come back to the board with actual bids.
with actual bids.
Correct.
Okay, and
And in
that,
the
that's a
meantime-
motion?
I don't think we need a
I
motion.
don't
do
think
we?
we need. a
We don't
motion.
need a motion? Okay,
At the
Okay.
same, at the same time, are we putting anything in the voice that's just suggesting that the board is struggling with this issue and we're wondering if there's any community input?
I think we missed the voice.
we missed the voice.
Okay.
So
well,
We
it's 2 months before it comes out again, unless we put it on the web. We could always put it on the website.
Yeah, I was
We
gonna
should
say,
put it on the website.
without putting words in her mouth, I would suggest that trustee Dickon is gonna say exactly that.
And then maybe we could flash something on our screen that says, we're going to remove the path, check the website.
We can do a rest.
We could
Right.
probably also do an e-blast through the chief's database as an announcement.
Okay. Okay, so we want some communication on the life of the path.
I think the e-blast will get you your best response.
Okay. Okay. Moving on. Does anybody really want to talk about maintenance work on the Riverwoods Road path?
I mean, at some point, I'd like to see it get addressed.
Well, I think so. That was like the last item here because number one, it's the most expensive. And secondly, with asphalt and so forth, it's really pushed out a little bit further than these other two. So,
Wasn't that, we really were wondering if the same thing should apply, that Carissa should prepare plans and come back with bids so that we know what the real cost would be. I think we just were thinking this could happen in the fall. It's not a project that's going to start up anytime soon. Right, Carissa? I mean, it's,
Yeah, I would recommend to do paving in the fall. There's a lot of contractors that aren't even bidding summer work because they just don't have the capacity for it. Or you're gonna get an extremely high cost because now they have to hire a whole new crew in order to attack the project.
so delay the bidding on Riverwoods Road. Does that make sense? Delay the construction of the documents and going out to bid for Riverwoods Road a little bit later in the year.
We can go out to bid whenever, we just state that the construction will start after Labor Day.
in other words,
Okay.
the idea was, I thought we were going to say maybe, are you comfortable with the idea of also preparing bid documents for this so we can see what the cost is?
Trustee Jamerson?
In the past, I know that Pat always lumped this in with the street paving because we got better prices, because this is kind of a pain in the butt project for pavers. So I know he always lumped it in with that to try and get better pricing, and I don't know if that would be what we should do this time around as well. I don't know where you are with the street bid.
Right, so the typical annual road program is in the fall. And we are starting to circulate. We have some SSAs that, or HOAs, I apologize, HOAs have reached out requesting to be part of the next annual program. So we could lump it in and see what the cost comes, but realistically, it's gonna probably be the biggest ticket item on either direction we go. Obviously, if it's a standalone, it's the only item on there. If we put it in with our road program, you're gonna get the same bidders. The same bidders that would be doing the road program would be bidding for the pathway as well. So it really just comes down to, you know, do you want two separate contractors doing the two separate programs? Do you want just one contractor, then you're facilitating? Realistically, it's not going to be any different. It's just preference at that point.
What is the wish of the board? Would you like her to prepare the documents now or?
I'd like to see the numbers.
Okay, okay. All right, I'm seeing nods all around. So same as Deerfield Road. We'll see if we can collect some bids for Riverwoods Road. That makes sense.
Except that one's gonna be asphalt path, right?
Exactly.
Right, and we're not planning on, we're not gonna ask for just a tear out price, right? No, that one's staying.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, well, you said same as.
Oh, I'm
Deerfield
sorry.
Road.
I'm sorry.
I just
I'm
wanted to
sorry.
make sure that Carissa knew that there's no intention of removing that path.
No,
We
no.
just we want it fixed.
Thank you for being
Not
clear.
until they widen Riverwoods Road, then we'll have to deal with it.
That's on the docket in 2036, I think.
Never mind. Thank you for that clarification. Are we all on the same page then? Oh,
Yep.
I think so. Okay. Approval of an ordinance amending the village fee schedule concerning fees for the special road, the SSAs.
Yeah.
Who wants to tackle that? Trustee Hollander, you want to
Yeah,
tackle that? Go ahead.
it's a fairly minor issue. We had a few complaints that SSAs that were either not funding their SSAs for a number of years or had low activity. We're still being responsible for the fees that we charge an SSA to offset the legal and engineering costs. They're de minimis. I think it's what, $100 or $200 and maybe $10 or $20 a house. And just to address it, what Bruce came up with was if they were inactive for 3 years, that they wouldn't be charged the fee. It's a fairly minor change in the policy, but it does address an issue that seemed reasonable.
Is there any discussion?
Good. That being the case, I'd like to
Thank you.
move.
In a motion for a waiver.
Yeah,
of
get a
first
motion
reading.
in quickly before.
Oh,
anybody
wait,
does
I know,
something.
I know. A motion for the waiver of first reading, please.
Yeah.
Nice.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? God, no. Roll call vote, please. Roll call, please.
Trustee Eastman,
Aye.
trustee Haber,
Aye.
trustee Hollander,
Aye.
trustee Jamerson,
Aye.
trustee Clayton,
Aye.
trustee Dickon.
Aye.
Is there a
Motion.
motion? Oops, sorry. Motion passes. Sorry.
It's 2205.
Whoa, 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 whoa,
No, no,
whoa,
no.
whoa,
Oh, time. No, first, no,
Move
yeah,
for a second reading and adoption.
thank you.
I'm sorry.
Second.
Okay.
I was trying to help Jerry. Sorry.
Is
about
there
that.
any, is there any further discussion on the approval of the ordinance? Hearing none, seeing none. Roll call, please.
Trustee Jamerson,
Aye.
trustee Clayton,
Aye.
trustee Dickon,
Aye.
trustee Eastman,
Aye.
trustee Haber,
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Okay, now you
Motion
can announce
Passed
it.
at
Now the ordinance number.
220506. Thank you.
Thank you. There is no old business that I am aware of. There's no reason to go into executive session at this point. Are there any other comments from the board on things that we've covered or haven't covered or that you'd like to see covered?
Not from the board. I just thought you might want to remind them that our mayor pro tem will spring into action.
No, he won't.
Oh,
There's no meeting on June 7th.
well, no, he will still be springing to action, but he
Oh,
knows that.
whoa, okay. Yay, I hope plenty happens while I'm gone.
Keep your phone on.
Does
Yeah,
that
I
mean-
need your cell phone, Mike.
Does that mean our next meeting is on the 21st of June?
Yes, it does. We will not have a quorum for June 7th. There's no quorum. I was going on a trip and that's why Trustee Haber was going to take control and we did a poll and there won't, I think there were 2 of you that were going to be there. So we've called it. So just a reminder. Not to worry, I'm talking with the accounts payable people and making sure that bills that need to be paid, we have enough time after our next meeting. And anything else would be those ordinary recurring expenses. So we're not in any danger of getting the lights turned off or anything of that sort. And people will be paid. I'm having payroll done early. So are there any other comments? I think there's one other comment that I believe our deputy clerk would like to make.
I'd like to wish Bruce K. Huvard, Esquire, a very happy birthday this Sunday. And thank you for all you do. You are irreplaceable.
Thank you. Very kind.
And with that, move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call.
Trustee Clayton,
Aye.
Trustee Dickon,
Aye.
Trustee Eastman,
Aye.
Trustee Haber,
Aye.
Trustee Hollander,
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
And I will be letting you know if the meeting is Zoom or in person at another time. Because we just don't know about the next executive order, but we'll stay in touch. So thank you very much
Okay, good night all.
and good
Night.
night.
Good night.
Good night.